Hi, and welcome to Sage Designers. My name is Susan Palmer, and today we're going to be interviewing one of my favorite friends, Kathleen Lambert, a wonderful surface designer and educator. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, how are you, Susan?
Good, and you?
Oh, I'm just great.
Well, your background looks beautiful today, along with you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that because I kind of had a freak out moment and had to move some stuff around. So cool.
So tell us about yourself.
Well, I am a surface pattern designer, which I love, which is, of course, what we do, right, in our group. And I have been doing this now for about 3.5 years, which I just love. I love being able to work from home and make art all the time, all day long. I am in Hudson, Ohio, and Ohio is where I was born. So a lot of my family, my parents, my sister, and my extended family are here. But I haven't always lived here. Or I grew up pretty much in New York, in northern New York, in a little town called Plattsburgh, which is on like the Canadian border, and Lake Champlain, it borders in between New York and Vermont. So I grew up kind of in their Adirondacks, and that's where I met my husband. And we've been married for 28 years now, but we were high school sweethearts and then got together in college again, and we have moved all over the place. I had him move back to Ohio. It was a joke in our family that he could go to grad school wherever he wanted as long as it was in Ohio. And so he went to the University of Akron and I went to seminary. So I became a Presbyterian pastor. Shortly before I became ordained, we had our first child, and now we have three. Each of them have been born in a different state. So we have moved all over. And we are recently back to Ohio, having lived most recently in California, where we were for 5 years. It was during that time in California that I discovered Anne LaFollette and surface pattern design in her Pattern Design Academy, and was just really intrigued with the idea of putting art, any kind of art that you can make on any kind of product that you can think of that has a surface. So it can go on fabric, and it can go on phone cases, and it can go on stationery, anything at all. That is what I spend most of my time doing when I'm not meeting the demands of the family. But I love nature. I loved everywhere we've lived, being on the coast. The oceans are just amazing to me. I feel very fortunate having lived, near nature and in the mountains. And so now, because I'm surrounded by the woods, it gives me a lot of inspiration for my art as well.
How long have you been in Ohio since when you moved back? How many years now?
We have been here almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years this summer. Adam and I lived here before we had kids. And then we moved back again one time with 3 kids. For him and I, it's been a lot of going to old haunts and, that sort of thing. But definitely was the pandemic that drove us back, because I got, real scared that something might happen to my family, my parents or my sister, and I wouldn't be able to see them. And now I see them all the time. I'm going to an art show with my mom on Saturday.
Fun. You were a minister.
Mm-hmm.
What other jobs have you had?
One of my favorite jobs after pastoring when we were in California is I substitute taught for English as a second language. I have a degree in English, and so I really, really love words and literature and communication and all of that. But I also really love people. And the people that I met, because it was adult education, they were from all over, and spoke all kinds of different languages. And we just had so much fun. And, I incorporated a lot of art into teaching, because art is kind of a universal language, right? I mean, people interpret it however they want, but it's a communication, a way to communicate. It's good for all of us to communicate through art. I really enjoyed my students, and I love being a pastor. I always try to shake things up, especially when I was going into seminary. Somebody said that ministry is comforting the disturbed and disturbing the comfortable. And I love that. And So I think that is a lot of my life. I mean, as a mother, I'm that way. I think I maybe spend little bit more time disturbing the comfortable than the disturbed. So anyway, that's kind of, what I do. I was very active in the Women's March, a lot of activism for human justice. I do that with the art. I do that with words. I love to just kind of push the boundaries, say, you know what, if it hasn't been done before, then why don't I do it? There's got to be a way around this.
Well, you've rocked my world quite a lot of times.
I hope there's enough balance of the comforting and disturbing.
Absolutely. So it sounds like you're like to read books. Do you have a favorite author?
I absolutely love the Outlander series. I love all things English and Scottish. I went to England as an exchange student in college in the Lake District. So I had studied the Romantic poets in the Lake District and went to Wordsworth's Dove Cottage and his grave and all that. So I loved Outlander when it came out because I had been to a lot of those areas, not so much in Scotland, but pretty close to it. The Lake District is way up there. So that Diana Gabaldon wrote the Outlander series.
Besides surface design, what else excites you?
Oh, technology. I love gadgets. I've loved Apple products. I have an Apple Watch and I have an Apple iPhone and a computer and an iPad. And so when Adobe Illustrator came out on the iPad, I learned how to do it. And then I realized nobody else was teaching that. And since I love to teach, I thought, well, I'll just bring this along, bring everybody else along too and see what we learn together. And I just here's my iPad. Her name is Sapphire. I encourage my students to name their iPad so that they will spend some time and not be afraid of the technology, but kind of be more personable and take her along with you, and I have been using an iPad since, back when I was preaching. I would write all my sermons and then just carry my iPad to the pulpit. So very comfortable with. When I first learned Adobe Illustrator, it was for me getting over this mind block that I couldn't do difficult things in difficult computer programs. And now I have learned Ecamm and I've learned Kajabi and I'm learning about Searchy and all these classes online. And now I can offer classes online. And so if you want to learn more, we have lots of fun. If you haven't seen the last class, we were talking about Procreate, bringing our beautiful things that you can do in Procreate into Illustrator, and vectorizing them and then making them into patterns. So that excites me, technology, but also women things. I mean, like, especially, like I said, I was involved with the Women's March. And Susan, then when you said that a lot of fabric companies are owned mainly by men, but women are the consumers of the fabric.
Yes.
I was like, that doesn't make sense. And you said, so why don't we think about like what we can do together as women, and maybe someday get to being a women-owned fabric company. I'm on board. I'm in. Count me. I'm all in, and I don't play poker very much, but I'm a very competitive card player, by the way.
Do you have any other hobbies? It looks like you're a watercolorist.
I do love to do watercolor. It's so zen. It's so zen. I love to crochet, also very zen. And when I say zen, I mean like meditative. I get so involved that I just don't think about anything else. And I kind of liken it to camping. Do you go camping? Have you ever been camping?
I have been camping, but probably 4 years ago was the last time.
I grew up kind of camping in the Adirondacks. And it's still my favorite place to camp because there aren't as many predators like
alligators.
California, because I was afraid of the scorpions and tarantulas. I want to camp in Florida because of the alligators, and so I still like, even Ohio is a great place to camp. But when you go camping, the first thing you have to do is you have to find water. And you have to find some dead wood to make a fire, and you have to pitch a tent, and you can't think about anything else because you have to fill your basic needs. That's where the relaxation comes in, I think, and that's the way I feel about watercoloring and about crocheting. And when I get really involved in them, starting to sew, Susan, I got my sewing machine out. Other hobbies I just love being outside. I love to bike. I love to mountain bike
Mm,
and also ski. Really love skiing.
nice. How do you get inspired?
Well, namely is nature for sure. I mean, I absolutely love it. I have a window that I could look at right here. And just yesterday, I was sitting here and a woodpecker, one of the red-breasted woodpeckers,
Yeah.
just like dropped right. And I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I got to take a picture of that because I'm going to be vectorizing that and drawing it and painting it now. I mean, that it just happens. And so nature is probably where I get most of my inspiration from. I also love going on Instagram and watching other forms of art come together, those art process videos, where somebody does a time lapse of doing watercolor or something. So I guess if I have like a focus, a category, I had done a clubhouse once where we talked about themes. To my chagrin, not everybody thinks like that. So I guess that's kind of my thing. I didn't realize, I guess it's the way I was raised, because when I came back to Ohio, I realized we had all these theme parties. My family does this, so I must have learned it from them. But anyway, so if I had a theme, and that's what kind of like inspired me to make this pattern that I've made. We were putting together all the things of Sage Designers, and Kyle has designed a logo for us. Susan, of course, you came up with the idea for Sage, and thinking of sage green, we kind of wanted to go with that. And this was the color that Kyle came up with. And I thought, you know what, then I'm going to do something with this color. So I get inspired by that kind of stuff. Give me a prompt or a theme or a category. But what's really cool, what I'm really, really proud of this for, first of all, the pink pattern in the center is their S's that I kind of tipped over and just made a repeating pattern by using an artistic brush on the iPad. Everything here is done on the iPad. Then I kind of did the mirror image of the top of the S, and then did the mirror image and flipped it over. And then I made a repeat out of it. And every single thing in there, in the green pattern, is just using those brush strokes and putting them together, that I then use the repeat tool on to make, a flower or any of these other abstract designs. Now the green is the exact same green as Sage Designer's logo. I played with what would be a good complement, and I even had my oldest look at it, because at one time I had it kind of more of like a bubblegum pink, and that was just way too much. That's the kind of stuff that inspires something, like, because I didn't sit down to make a pattern like this. By trying things out and by thinking about sage and what would I like? And so the S is like S for Sage, my Sassy Sage monogram.
It's
So
beautiful. And I do love the pink. I think it's a perfect contrast to the green, and it doesn't like overpower it at all. Nicely done.
Thank you. Yeah. So I might like to, next time we order fabric, get fabric in these two patterns. They do complement each other.
Nice. Okay, we talked about Anne, and she's the one that basically introduced you to surface design.
Mhm.
Have you had any other influencers besides Anne?
Well, of course, Anne introduced me to Bonnie Christine, and I learned a lot from Bonnie Christine. There are things that Bonnie got into, and I think because Bonnie really is for fabric, that I didn't understand. Like, I'd never heard of Quilt Market. I didn't know who William Morris was. It's that kind of detailed work that Bonnie Christine really helped me, and to also see what the world is that's out there, world of surface pattern design. I mean, I just had no idea. As far as art goes, always loved Mary Engelbreit for the whimsicalness, and now she's got some snark. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like Mary Engelbreit After Dark or something like that. It is really great stuff. Georgia O'Keeffe, she does like a lot of the flowers. And I love too that they're women. I love Salvador Dali. You know me, I just pushing the boundaries all over and like, what the heck? And we've been to the Dali Museum in Florida, in St. Petersburg, because we live there too. I kind of want my art to make a little bit more, so I'm not into complete abstract. It's got some symbolism sometimes to me, but it doesn't have to be like a really deep, like make you think kind of thing. I like things to be whimsical and colorful. The art that I make, I cannot speak enough about Maria Alzanier and her watercolor class, because I did not do watercolor before. I love my rooster. And that is right up here. That is a watercolor. I call it my Mona Lisa of my work. I just love it. It's my masterpiece, and has now been printed on a fabric. I mean, how cool is that?
So cool. And it turned out so pretty too.
And it's in such a short time. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I've been an artist all my life or went to a fancy art school. So yeah. Oh, here's another one of my rooster right here, and with that blue check pattern around it. So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun to see how the watercolor came out through the printing process. It really still looks watercolorish, even on the fabric.
It is awesome. It is so awesome. This is what I call Ohio Rooster from the Ohio Farmhouse collection. I'll hold that up.
It looks beautiful.
And yeah, it looks from here. I mean, it really looks like, like you could have painted it right on there.
Exactly.
The detail, the contrast, everything is just the color. Everything is exactly the way I want. And if I hold it up, it's almost exactly the same size in this perspective. But I did this whole check with a gradient, and I love it.
I'm so glad that it turned out like we thought it was going to. So that's wonderful. Do you have different tools that you use when you're creating?
This is my favorite paintbrush. This is a size 20.
Big.
So I again learned this from Maria, and this one is an expensive one. I never would have spent the money on things like this before, but Surface Pattern Design was investing in me. Taking that first class, spending the first amount of money with Anne LaFollette was not something I had done for like 20 years. That was a big deal. And then from there, my Mac desktop computer, which I absolutely love. So, and then a host of Adobe product. There are all kinds of things if you have the Creative Suite. And by the way, I've got a link on my website, which is KathleenLambertArt.com. You can get that Creative Suite at, the student price, and it will give you access to all their creative apps. So I use Illustrator and Capture and Creative Cloud, and then I use it for video editing, and then I'm learning all these other things like Photoshop or InDesign if I want, and Dimension for doing mock-up. And I just got new paints, Derwent. They're watercolor, but they're called ink tints.
Oh, pretty.
Look at that brilliant color.
Yeah, they're really vibrant.
And my daughter was just telling me that she was watching a video about how fuchsia or magenta, one of the two, somebody was making a case that it's a primary color. That's interesting. I love getting deep into this kind of stuff, because you can't make pink by just adding white to red, which is what we think of pink is,
Mhm.
You have to have some of that bluish purple added in. It's really hard to get a really good pink unless you are really good at mixing colors. And maybe Maria could do that, in her sleep, which I'm sure she could, but I couldn't. And so I was excited. I was really excited about the fuchsia here. And then this turquoise, I just absolutely love. As you can see, I use turquoise a lot.
What's your big dream for the future?
I really want to have like a label, like a line of products. I love kitchen textiles. So I've always loved kitchen textiles or dining textiles, like tablecloths and, all that stuff, table runners and matching napkins and tea towels and aprons and pot holders, or they're stationary. So I kind of want to be like Mary Engelbright in that I want to have all those products. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. So I'm trying all these different things. And one of them is definitely with the fabric, going the direction of the fabric and getting my style established, start to make products myself. The idea of a fabric company really is exciting to me, because then, we're talking about, we own it all, and we do the art we want to do. Secondary dream just for all artists, which is to have a giant barn. They just would have like a $25 a month hang fee, and then they can put up all the art that they want in that area, and they get to make money. And that we would all hold different kinds of art classes and workshops and things like that in this barn. Wouldn't that be cool? It's important to keep asking the question, what is your big dream? There have been so many times where I am like, second guessing myself and having all that self-doubt. And I just put that dream right center focus. Think about that dream, and that will inspire me just to the next step. Not to have it today, but just what's the next step? And the next step is, well, I'm going to do fabric and see what happens with that. And I do believe we can manifest whatever we want.
Just like Bonnie Christine says, if we do one thing a day to walk towards that dream, we'll get there.
That's right.
Tell me again how we contact you.
So contact details. I am Kathleen Lambert, and my company is Kathleen Lambert Art. So my email address is kathleen@kathleenlambertart.com. And that kathleenlambertart.com is my website. Kathleen Lambert Art is my Instagram. You can also find a Facebook page for Kathleen Lambert Art. One way or another, you can reach me in any of those places. What's upcoming for me is that I'm thinking of breaking up my larger class into smaller videos that people could just get one, or maybe buy them in pieces so that they don't have to, put out the big expense of a larger class. So that's what I'm working on right now.
This has been very educational and very enlightening and inspirational. So thank you so much for all this, Kathleen.
Well, thank you so much for interviewing me and having this time, and all the work that you've been doing, Susan, for Sage Designers. It's so exciting to have this opportunity to see our artwork on fabric, to have the fabric in my hand. It's a real product. It's a real thing. And it's so much nicer than anything I can get anywhere else.